this is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. Today I'm putting up two videos. This first one is for this tam that is not lacy and it is automatically short row shaped. That's the other video. The video now is the second video. The second video is the lacy tam with the fancy lace going in a circle, and the lace matches up with these triangles that make the circular top of the tam. This is going to be a baby tam, and this lavender one is the one I'm showing how to do today. This tam has a ribbed band done just the same way as the other one, and it's assembled in just the same way as the other one. This video will focus on how to do the lace automatically using your Brother or Knit King electronic machine. If you want the written pattern with all four sizes, baby, toddler, child, and adult, and all the details and all the charts, there are 20 charts, that is available at www.dianaknits.com. I have just a few examples to show you, but there are 5 versions in each size. So this again was the baby auto-shaped. Here we have the toddler heart chart. Hearts available in all the sizes. And here is the diamond chart. The adult chart has 3 diamonds in each section. And the one that we're doing today. And here is the adult star chart. I just love this one because of the interesting design that it makes in the automatically shaped center. Now let's get started on our first lacy tam. I have already knitted the hat band. So that's made and set aside and ready to use. Now I'm going to program the machine. I have the patterns in charts, and I also have them in Design a Knit. Using a chart, you could beep this in stitch by stitch, but it is a fairly large chart. I'm using Design a Knit, and I have attached a Design a Knit cable to my electronic machine. And I'm turning the machine on, and then to tell it to receive the pattern, I put in 551, then step, then 1, then step, then 901, then step. It tells me the pattern will be recorded as 916. I press step and I wait. The machine beeps when the pattern is in and the ready light is on, but I also want to make sure I'm on pattern number 916. So let's put in the 916 and press step until the ready light's on. So that's all I have to do to program the machine to do this. So I can disconnect my DAC cable. This is much easier than beeping it in stitch by stitch. Now I'm at the hat tension, which happens to be tension 4, done a few rows of waist knitting over only 30 needles. These baby hats aren't all that big, plus you're only looking at half of the diameter here. And I'm going to do 1 row of ravel cord, which will be easier to get out later than the waist yarn. I need to end with my carriage on the left. So that means I needed to finish up the waist yarn knitting with the carriage on the right and then go from right to left. My carriage is way over on the left so that it will bring the pattern aboard when I knit that first row. Since this is a standard gauge machine and the stitches are not huge, I'm going to focus in closely here, and I'll have to just describe where the carriages are. But suffice it to say that the carriage is on the far left, and it is going on KC2 setting and the garment tension. The lace carriage has to have its in needles suppression deactivated. So to do that, I've got it deactivated, but anyway, activated is like this, and it has to be done on both sides. So in that setting, it would always push back any in needles, but I need them to kick out, And a lot of people don't realize you can turn that off by just turning the center screw on these little pink gadgets a half turn toward the middle. They pop down, and now they won't suppress in needle selection. I need that for the automatic pattern to work. This is very much like enchanted edgings. Now I'm going to knit my first row, and I'm knitting, I'm selecting needles, and I'm using the hat yarn, which is a lavender color. So I'll thread the carriage and knit from left to right. And it's selected some needles on the right end. I'm going to put a clothespin on this yarn, and I'm going to have another look at my weights on the ends. I want to point out that this left weight shouldn't be way over on the very end. Bring it in about an inch from the end. The right weight is a little bit less of a problem. And I have my first row in. With that first row in, I push the part buttons on my carriage. With those two part buttons in, it will knit the selected needles only. These few on this end, you can see the needle butts are pushed forward here. All these other needles back in B position, it's just going to slide across. But keep in mind you have to slide all the way across because it needs to select the next row properly. Now here's my hat band with the wrong side facing me, and I start here, and I'm going to hang 2 stitches on this first end needle. So both the first and second stitch. I'll put the second stitch on. So I put the first stitch on top. It's a seaming stitch, and it'll make the band look a little better when I sew it up. And then I want to hold the band close to the bed, and I'm going to knit 2 rows. Each time I knit a row, I go all the way past this edge. That way the machine picks out the correct needles. And I should also point out that my little group of needles is right in the center of the machine. There's no getting around the problem that we can only have one patterning carriage on the bed at a time, and I'm going to have to push the main carriage all the way off on an extension rail, and then when I'm using the lace carriage, it'll come on the belt from the other extension rail. It'll go across, and then I get it all the way off. Now every time I have selected needles and this regular carriage is on the right, I'm going to pick up the next stitch from the band every time. And for the first few rows, it's only this carriage. We don't do any lace work until some lace stitches pop out, and you'll see when that happens. So this is just so easy. The machine is doing all the counting and keeping track for me so that I can make something quite fancy quite easily and not make a lot of mistakes. You can see by now that every row or two, actually every 2 rows, it picks out one more needle to knit so that a triangle is starting to form. There's a flat area and then the sloped area of the triangle. Now it only popped out one needle. This is my lace time. So main carriage goes off the bed. Here is my main carriage way over off the bed. This pattern is very unusual in that both carriages select needles. That means that when this carriage is on the bed, it moves this belt and it selects needles. When it's off, it doesn't interfere with the belt. Most patterns, you don't have both carriages selecting needles. When the lace carriage goes on the bed, it connects to this belt also, and you cannot have them both on the belt. It will miss pattern, or you could damage your machine. So each time I say I'm moving onto the extension rails, I mean I'm moving all the way over. The lace carriage comes on the bed off the extension rail on the left end. I go across with it. It transferred that stitch. And now I push it back. and it picks out a group of needles. Now, the lace carriage will always be only 2 rows. And whenever you have this group of needles picked out, then you have to pick up your next stitch off the hat band, and then you come in with your main carriage. Now, it's kind of far away, so I'm going to have to lift up the yarn as I approach. I've got a little extra tightness on the upper tension because of this, but if you don't lift up the yarn as you approach, you could get some looping. So I go across and back, and it picked out another needle. So, lace carriage time. So it's main carriage, and then it's lace carriage, and then it's pick up a stitch. And I just put this stitch on this end needle. I don't add a needle. It's the end needle that's in work, and I leave it in the D position. It needs to be a selected needle so it will knit. And this carriage coming over and knitting sews the hat band to the hat. Once again, lace carriage, and pick up a stitch, and main carriage, and lace carriage, and pick up a stitch, and main carriage. So I'm going to do this routine over and over and over, lace carriage, pick up a stitch, main carriage, for a while. I've got quite a few rows of pattern, and I'm going to come back after I've done that and show you my first section of the hat. Now here I am coming to the top of the triangle, and I'm going to knit from left to right, and it's selecting what I think would be the last row of lace. Maybe there's one more. Yeah, I think that was the last row. And I have to hang this loop. And I think the machine will beep. Yep, this will be the last of that, last row of that first triangle. Let's have a look at the triangle. It's a pie shape, more or less. It's got a flat area here and then a triangle there. This is one of 6 pie shapes that make the hat, and I have to move my weights up because as it continues making these pie shapes, the weights won't directly be under where I want them to be and exerting weight where I want it to exert. Now I'll show you a similar hat so you can see the pie shapes. This is the adult size, and here's a pie shape right here. Starts here, goes to here, comes out there, and that's 1/6 of the hat. So I have 5 more to make to have myself a hat, and this will be done just as I did before. Now you may ask, can I do this with a punch card machine? No. All of these patterns are wider than 24 stitches, so this requires an electronic machine. Then you may ask, may I do this with a studio electronic? I have not worked out the pattern for studio electronic because I no longer own one, and I think the way it's engineered would be much more difficult. So I'm just going to keep knitting, and this next group of rows will be with the main carriage only. So you see, I'm back to this place, the beginning of my next section, and you saw that before on the first section. So I have to hang a stitch on that end needle and knit 2 rows, and I keep on in this fashion until I need the lace carriage again. And I know I need the lace carriage when it stops picking up a whole group of needles and it just selects a couple of individual needles. In this pattern's case, it's really only going to select one on that first row with the lace carriage. I'm being very butterfingers about picking up this stitch. Got it. Okay, so I will keep on doing that, and I will make 5 more sections. I have made all of my triangles, and I know I have because I've used up all of the band. In fact, I put the last 2 loops of the band on right after running my lace carriage this last time. Now, some of the patterns don't run the lace carriage as much as this one did, but this ended with a lace carriage row right before my last row. Now, what I'm going to do is one final row to the left. My pattern just beeped, so it'll set up for the first row to the right, but I'm not going to do that triangle. So my final row to the left, and then I'm going to cut the yarn, leaving enough of a tail to sew this. This is going to be a grafted seam, and then I'm going to turn off patterning, and I'm going to take this off on some waste yarn. And I started to use some pink yarn, but I think this darker yarn will show up better for me, so I'm going to use it. This final step of sewing, putting this seam together with this seam with the graft, sewing the center, and sewing the little band, removing the waste yarn, that is all the same from one hat to another. Then after that, the blocking, where I typically pull it over a round object like a saucer or a plate, and then I steam it thoroughly and let it dry, I'm doing those all the same. I found with these little bitty baby hats that it's okay to just steam them and shape them with my hands. They are so small, but I did find a plastic lid small enough to use for a filler on these as I blocked. So I will turn it to the wrong side. I'll remove this waste yarn that goes all the way around. I'll sew a seam here. I'll sew the center seam, and then I'll sew the hat band seam. With the waste yarn off between the hat and the band, look what a beautiful seam we get. I don't think I could do any better hand sewing. Now I'm blocking my little beret. I ran a string around here and pulled it over a plastic lid, which was the one object I could find that was just the right size. I have blocked these over saucers and dinner plates and pot lids, whatever object fit that size the best. And then I steamed it, and now I'm letting it dry. This is the beret that I just made in the baby size. This pattern is available at www.dianaknits.com, and it contains all 4 sizes of automatically shaped berets. You can make the plain berets, but there are also different lace charts provided for lace berets in all 4 of the sizes. This is strictly a pattern for Brother or Knit King standard gauge electronic machines only.